What is not a core memory necessarily is like your school, Arizona, in the Big 12, right? But that is the core reality in year 2 under Brent Brennan. So let's spin it forward. If we just want to take a look at some of these teams that we're seeing through the lens of the West Coast. You got Utah, Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, BYU. There's changes, right? BYU's got a different starting quarterback than they did spring ball. Totally different human, right? Now he's down at Tulane. You look at Noah Fafita and Brent Brennan in year 2. I'm kind of curious as we're looking at expectations around some of these teams. You referenced Cal and Stanford on the conversation with Mike. What have you heard? Like, where do you net out? You were at Big 12 Media Days. You were at Big 10 Media Days. You track all those elements among these teams.
Yeah, well, what I mostly heard was people going, "Hey, did you get on the wrong bus?" Like, which was great. It was great to kind of touch base with friends at the schools and the media from our old days and stuff like that. But so let's start with the Big 12 specifically. Like, they after famously last year Arizona State being picked last in the preseason poll, they did not do a preseason poll this year in the Big 12. So I think that'll be interesting to see how things work with Arizona State, because this year they will be the hunted and not the hunters. Like, you can always have that chip on your shoulder that, hey, we were picked last in the league. And I think it was week 2 or 3 on this show last year where I was like, we might need to have a conversation about who the best team in Arizona is this year. And as an alum, that kind of killed me to say that, but like, turns out, like, yeah, we definitely needed to have that conversation because it was not the one that we thought. But I think it'll be interesting to see how ASU handles that this year. I saw, in the first week of practice, and Kenny Dillingham talking about afterwards, like, talking about how the team was practicing and that it was not up to the level of what a team like that is going to be. So I think talent wise, they're going to be at that level probably really last year. Like, running back, even though Cam Scadaboo is not there anymore, I think they're actually going to be pretty good at running back this year. They got Kyson Brown, they got Kanye Uda from Army. Like, they'll still be good there. They got Sam Leavitt at quarterback. They got Jordan Tyson at wide receiver. Like, they're going to be a talented team. There's going to be no question about that. It'll be how do they handle now having those expectations, which on the flip side for Arizona, there is not really that expectation this year where they had those expectations last year because they had Noah and T-Mac. But football is not a game of 2-on-2. Like, you can't just, roll out those two guys and be like, oh, we're good. Sorry, hitting the mic there. But how they're going to replace T-Mac, they're not going to have anybody as good as T-Mac in that wide receiver room. I mean, let's be frank about that. But can they be deeper at that position? Arguably, maybe, with that. So maybe Noah will have more options. Noah seems to have a good relationship with the new offensive coordinator. That's really good. When you talk about quarterbacks, you look at Colorado. I mean, obviously not having Shador there this year, not having Travis Hunter in that room for those quarterbacks, will be very interesting. How will there still be the same level of spotlight on Colorado just because of Deion Sanders as there has been the last couple of years when you don't have Shador and you don't have Travis? I think that'll be very interesting. Obviously, Coach Prime is dealing with all the health issues this last year. How does he handle all that? I mean, they're still, they have 2 very talented quarterbacks, but you never know until you actually see them play at that school how they're going to fit in with that. But they're going to have really good receivers as well. And then for Utah in that league was another team, obviously, that was the flip side of Arizona State last year that was picked to be the top. I'm curious if, he'll never say it, and he probably never even thought it, but if Utah would have had a better year last year, would that have been Kyle's last year in Salt Lake? He's the type that's not going to go out like that. But he's also the type that is also not really going to think about, even when everyone else is saying, oh, is this going to be the end? He doesn't think that way. Like, his mind is just programmed different than the rest of us, of not really putting those kind of expectations on things until, like, all of a sudden one day he'll wake up and be like, oh, this is it. Like, we're done. But their offense is going to be fascinating to watch as well, because they have the new offensive coordinator. They got the new quarterback. They both came over together, and Jason Beck and Devin Dampier. So it's going to be fascinating because the Big 12 is, I think, going to be just like the Big 12 was last year, where a lot of good teams. Is there a excellent team? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think the Big 12 has to navigate what the old Pac-12 did, right? We had Mikey M on, we went down memory lane. The truth around that era when the Pac-12 networks existed was there was no dominant team for a long period of time. You had Oregon for a minute, you had Stanford for a minute, you had UW for a minute, then Oregon kind of made a little run there late. Like that's just what it was. SC flashed twice, in that decade plus or so. Arizona State flashed for a minute, right? Arizona flashed in the final year in that league. So I think that's what the Big 12 is. And I think it's a good thing that the playoff has expanded and hopefully will expand again because I think college football is a lazy fan base. I just came out of I'll say this. I learned that the average college football fan who like loves college football consumes about an hour a weekend of actual games because you
Wow.
got to go pick your kids up. You've got just stuff to do. Now, and you're diehard Arizona fan, like you're locked in for 3.5 hours. But for the most part, like college football fans, those that love the game, that's what you consume. I think of the NFL. That's probably what I consume on a Sunday, an hour, overall, because I got stuff, I got kids, I got drop off, you got youth games, whatever you have. So that to me is just a reminder that narratives in college football are often lazy, and not in like the lazy like make your room, clean your bed because or you're lazy to to my kids, right? Like more of like you just got stuff going on. So yeah, the Big 12 they throw it all over the yard like Crabtree, right? And Graham Harrell, right? Like that's what it is. Oh, Pat Mahomes, yeah, he was. Yeah, that's just I think Baker Mayfield, like not in the league anymore, guys. Oklahoma's in the SEC. I just think that's what the league is. And now because the narrative is it's so talented, which I would agree. I don't know. I won't be the guy that I'm not co-signing on they have the best quarterback talent top to bottom. I don't think that right now. They're in the conversation for obvious reasons, but I think a lot of teams will beat each other. So what happens in one-score games? Is Sam Leavitt the difference? Is Avery Johnson at K-State the difference? Is Noah Fafita the difference? Is Devin Dampier the difference? Like that's what I look forward to. I think just to piggyback on your notes on those teams, for Utah, probably the most disappointing team last year in college football. Just in terms of we thought they were going to come in and be the bully in that league, and Arizona was the sexy pick. They struggled. But to be fair and give it context, which is what we do here at Y Option, the amount of injuries that hit that team, not named Cam Rising, were dramatic. So I think they'll come back. I think they'll come back with a vengeance. I'm just so curious what the offense is going to look like. I just think it may take a minute to adjust to what is big time college football play. We saw it with Max Brosmer. I think it's just a fact when guys come up, especially athletic quarterbacks. Cam Ward struggled, in that regard. Like you think you can outrun a defensive lineman, and it ain't the same type of defensive lineman you played when you were in a different conference. I think it's just the truth. So, excuse me, Utah UCLA at 8 p.m. Let's go. Like, can't wait for that first game of the season with Tino Sinceri and Deshaun Foster. We'll get into them next week after I get off the training camp tour. But that's going to be a test for Utah. What's their identity? We know what Kyle wants to do. He wants to run the football and be physical. How do they do that with this dynamic quarterback and his OC? Can't wait to find out. Ravage reviews from Kyle about his leadership traits. He hasn't talked about a quarterback like he's talked about Dampier since Cam Rising, which I know was just a year ago, but it was he never talked about anybody at that level. So that I think will be interesting. Let's go to Arizona. I'm just a fan, folks, that I think it's way harder to take over a successful program than it is to take one over that's 1-11. Way harder to take over what Jed Fish did than what Kevin Sumlin did at Arizona. Both equally hard. Not saying they're not hard, but I thought last year my purview was you got to make everybody happy if you're Brent Brennan because you got to keep everybody. And that I understand because you're trying to hang a roster together. I felt, and I've known Brent for a long time. We've talked about this. He's been on this show. We didn't get the best version of him in terms of leading a culture and setting the tone last year. I know from talking to him, it is that this year. From connecting with players, did you get that feel at media days talking to players, Jim? At
Yeah,
Big 12 media
well,
days?
even just talking to coach there at media day, like it's the way I even like was talking with him about it. These were more my words than his, but like each time you're having that change, when Coach Saban retired, and then Kalen goes from Washington to Alabama, and then Jed goes from uh, Arizona to Washington, and each time those moves happen, the portal is opening up for those teams.
That's
And
it,
so
folks. Yeah.
yeah, that's it. And you're having to re-recruit all those, but you can now still kind of pick and choose. By the time it gets to Brent and Arizona, that those shelves have been picked clean, and you are trying to then make the most of what you have and convince guys to stick around, because there are no really other options for you as the coach to bring anybody in to really compete with them.
Yeah, yeah, that's spot on. And I think Seth Dagey in this offense, it's going to feel like Texas Tech because that's the tree he comes from. I was around him when he was at SC. Big fan of what I think they'll do offensively. I think they will spray the ball all over the yard with accuracy. So look out for them in that regard. Colorado, Julian Lewis, I'm just telling you, man, he's a different type of passer. And from talking to people in Boulder, he might not start, but he's going to play. He was at Media Days. Jim, you saw him there for a reason, right? For a reason. It's not handed to him. Caden Salter should be the guy. Crazy success at Liberty. We were with him at the Elite 11 2 years ago when he was a counselor. But I think Julian's just too gifted to not play. So we'll see. We'll see how that shakes out with them in the Big 12 in tight games. They want a quarterback that can run. Do they want the young passer? Where are they on the offensive line? What are their wideouts like? To your point, they got to replace a lot of productivity in Travis Hunter and company. And then I think finally, just to touch on Arizona State, what has everybody said for 30 years? My 20-some years in California, they've said one phrase. Can you guess how they described Arizona State? You know
No.
exactly. A sleeping giant.
Yeah.
A sleeping giant. And it
Yeah.
awoke last year. It awoke. Kenny Dillingham is not letting this thing slow down. They got a real Heisman candidate in Sam Leavitt. I think they have one of the best in the conversation at the very top of offensive coordinators in Marcus Arroyo. He's going to be one of the hottest names in America next year to get a head job. Mark it down. I don't know if he wants it, if he's going to take it. I haven't talked to him about that, but I think he is that skilled on a bunch of levels. I think this thing is rolling. And if they can can you imagine them in the playoff again, year two? Now we're talking about in this new look Big 12, it's ASU's league. It's nobody's league now because of the mismatch of, the combination of teams from all over the world. But ASU wins it again, and now they start being talked about like, are they going to be like Clemson in the ACC a decade ago? A fair conversation. They got I think everything they want. They're beginning the process to build an indoor facility. They got a young coach. This is the only place he wants to be. They've paid their coordinators. They're taking care of their players. They can get anybody to transfer in. The place is awesome when it's a game. I mean, the Inferno is off the hook. AD is hot as can be, loves being there. Like, I just think that it's set up to keep going. So that's my take on those schools.